Sometimes games are so captivating that just the vibe for the game is enough to immerse yourself into it. That's why I like to think that games are the best form of media, even more so if we're talking about the entertainment aspect. Games have persevered through multiple generations of consoles, with many of them crashing and burning. Out of all the generations of consoles, I have to say that the seventh generation of consoles was one of the best that the world has ever seen. The widespread use of online gaming that connected people all over the world, combined with games and experiences that have become classics, almost all of them will look back fondly on. The Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 were the forerunners of this generation, having most of the widely remembered AAA titles released for them, with the domination of online play, or just the general obsession with it at the time. In this generation of consoles, many of the games were shooters, especially on the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 was very popular in America, but failed to sell many consoles in the Japanese market, and this may be the reason why many Japanese games didn't release on the 360. Those games were reserved for the PlayStation 3, and in the case of this video, JRPGs. There were far less JRPGs that released for the 360 than the PlayStation 3, and the ones that did release for the console tended not to get a lot of attention, and in many cases, a shame, as many of them were quite good. One of these titles is the focus of our video. The game is a perfect combination of the shooting genre that was loved in this generation and JRPGs. I think it's about time we talked about the subject of our video, Resonance of Fate. Resonance of Fate, also known as End of Eternity in Japan, was a game that was developed by Tri-Ace, a developer very familiar with making JRPGs, with them widely being known for the creation of the Star Ocean and the Valkyrie Profile franchises. The game was released on January 28, 2010 in Japan, and later on March 16, 2010 in North America. The publisher for the game was the very well-known company Sega. To get a better understanding of the thoughts and the work that went into the game, I did a bit of research and found a good interview with the director and the producer for the project. The director of the project, Takayuki Seguro, discussed in an interview that the team worked to break away from the traditional themes of JRPGs, typically being the swords and magic, so they went for a more steampunk aesthetic. And I have to say that they did this perfectly, but we'll get more into that later. Tri-Ace and Sega were companies that typically hadn't worked together at this point. In their interview, it was said that Sega was looking for an RPG for their lineup, and Tri-Ace had that RPG. This interview with the director and the producer for the project was very insightful, so if you want to read it, I'll put it in the description. But one of the main takeaways is that they were aware that the game was going to be more difficult to sell on the 360 in Japan, but they still decided to make the game multi-platform. In my case, I respect it. The music for the game was composed by Matoi Sakuraba and Kohei Tanaka, and I have to say, they did not miss. I do recommend this soundtrack. I'll have some of the music for the game playing in the background, so if you hear something you like, try out the OST for the game. I played the game with Japanese audio, and I have to say for voice acting in the 2010 game, it was quite good. One of the things I found out while researching the voice actors was that the voice actors for one of the main characters voice Keima Katsuragi, the GOAT himself. I know, it was trippy to me too. But with that quick dive into the development, I think I should actually start talking about the game. For this video, I'll start with the world slash the characters, and then I'll go into the combat and the gameplay, and we'll be finishing off with the entire story of the game. I feel that it's a bit more beginner friendly to introduce some of the lore and the context before telling the story, as the game throws you in completely blind. And honestly, that adds to the experience. If at any point during this video you think that this could be a fun game to play, please go and play the game and experience it for yourself. But if that's not your thing, but the game looks cool, then stick around and thank you for watching. The story of this game takes place in the Tower of Basil. Basil is a giant tower constructed by humans thousands of years ago that the people of the world still continue to live on. All the people in the world live on the Tower of Basil, with the reason for the tower being made and how the tower itself works being a complete mystery to the current residents of the tower. The tower is broken into layers that are travel between the main core lift and the elevators that connect the layers. The higher layers of the tower are safer and inhabited by the wealthier members of society, with the poorer people living in the more dangerous lower levels. In order, the top three layers are known as the chandelier, layers 4 through 6 being known as the upper layers, 7 through 9 being known as the middle layers, and 10 through 12 being known as the lower levels. As a progression of time has passed, many areas of the tower have become destroyed or simply non-functional. The buildings in the cities present throughout the game and the tower differ depending on the level they are found in. The cities in the game are more steampunk in nature, with many of them having large cogs and machines sprawled throughout the cities, like the beginning city of Abel, which is also the main base for the main characters. It has a massive construction of a cogwheel that gives the city a lot of personality. To get to most of the city, you actually run past it in a spiral motion. The manors on the higher levels are far posher and grand than the cities at the lower levels. These manors have a lot of personality to them as well, as the personality and the construction of the manor is based on the cardinal who owns them. But we'll get more into the cardinals themselves later. The lower levels of the tower are far poorer and destroyed than the other layers. Many of the cities in the lower levels are sparse, and the city buildings down there are mainly rubble, with danger being everywhere. Speaking of the danger, let's discuss the monsters and the enemies that are also the other residents of Brazil. Many of the enemies in the game are, of course, human, with them using a variety of weapons to attack the main characters, using handguns, submachine guns, sword, etc. The other enemies of the game being the monsters and the machines that inhabit the different layers of the tower, and they also use weapons. Some of these enemies simply try to attack, like dogs biting and other monsters attacking with their bodies, while others use things like cannons, giant hammers, Gatling guns, elemental cannons, and even laser weapons. The weapons and armor placed on enemies differ between the enemies, giving them a lot of character and making them feel a bit different when you're going through the game constantly in battle. Now that you're a little familiar with the world, let me introduce you to our main characters of the game. The first member of our group is Vacheron. He is the oldest member of the group, being the leader, and he also handles all the negotiation and prep work for the group. He's both level-headed and a veteran in combat, making him both the calm member of the group. The next member of the group is Zephyr. He is a mysterious member of the group that has a dark past, and that constantly troubles him. He's the one that saves the last member of this group. The final member of this group is Leanne. She also has a very dark past that decides the story, and she is a core member of the group that adds a lot of character to the story. This is just a basic introduction into these characters, as when discussing the story, I'll get deeper into their individual stories and characteristics. But before I get into the actual story, I want to talk about one of my favorite aspects of the game. The graphics for the game are very good for a 7th generation game from 2010. The game is quite beautiful and detailed, with environments having a lot of elements that bring the game to life. The game is fluid, with the animation for the characters being the elements that make the game feel amazing to play. The models for these characters are very detailed, and their animations are used perfectly to show out this detail. For example, check out this cutscene and look at the facial expression that Line makes.
このダイナミックなフェイスペインティングはどうだ。この貧弱なボディが見事にそれを引き立ててる。はっ、そうか。
But it's not just this cutscene. The gameplay has animations that are just so cool and stylish, and makes the game exude style. Now, of course, there are other games from this time that look similar to Resident Fate, or arguably better. But honestly, this game is beautiful and has animations that I haven't seen too often from games of this era. Look at these animations that the characters use in combat. They are seamlessly transitioned into. Each of the characters have multiple cool animations for different weapons in the game that shows their personality in the way that they use the weapons. When Line uses her weapons, it's animated as if she's dancing through the sky. Zephyr, in contrast, has far cooler habits, like shooting the beginning of the clip, and then letting the submachine go, flipping and grabbing it back and shooting the rest of the bullets in the magazine. These animations throughout my entire playthrough of the game never got old, especially when there's something that's constantly done back to back. Even speaking of the other characters and the enemies in the game, their models are quite detailed as well. Many of the monsters in the tower are quite well designed as well, with many of them having makeshift armor that both looks cool and has influence in the gameplay. But that's enough dancing around the biggest part of the game. Let's dive into the gameplay loop for the game. The main characters of the game are hunters, meaning they take on all kinds of jobs for money. If you're familiar with fantasy games, it's akin to being an adventurer. The missions that the group takes on are both the main jobs and the mission for the chapter that needs to be completed to progress through the game. The other missions are side quests that, like other JRPGs, can be fetch quests, deliveries, or exterminations. Even the main missions can simply be one of these things, with that being all that happens in that chapter for our main characters. But they always have relevance to the story in the long run, which builds in the background throughout the game. Missions can be taken at the guild and started and completed by talking to the person that created the post. So you have to make sure to talk to the person that created the job post to start the jobs, or sometimes the things needed to complete the quest won't spawn or start at all. When leaving the town and exploring the Tower of Basil, the map of the tower is shaped in a hex grid. All the hexes in the tower must be activated for them to be traveled on. To power these hexes, you have to use energy hexes. Energy hexes come in all shapes and sizes that can be used for different parts of the seal. The layers all have different layouts and grid patterns that require you to use the different shapes to open the paths to these different areas. To use the hex, you have to connect the hexes trying to be powered so no one's already powered. So, you can't power hexes in the middle of gray hexes. There are also special energy hexes that are color specific. There are also special energy hexes that are color specific that can only be used on unpowered spaces of their respective color or already powered hexes of that color. All these hexes in the game can be gotten as drops from monsters and battles in the game. The color hexes themselves have another purpose, other than opening specific hexes. Once these colored hexes are connected to a terminal, they have effects on the battles taking place on these tiles. The terminals are hexes on the map that are hidden under gray spaces. These terminals have to be activated and connected to a group of colored hexes to activate the terminal and its effects. The number of spaces that need to be filled with the color hexes connected to the terminal is shown in the number above the terminal. When a battle takes place on the terminal's colored spaces, the effect of that terminal will be given inside the battle, a lot of the time being positive effects for the party. So it is pretty useful to activate them while playing the game, so you can get specific buffs that we'll get into later. There are shops in the game where you can buy items that can be used for battle. There are also shops in the games that you can sell. There are also stores that sell new weapons, but the weapons themselves are quite expensive. The shops also sell parts that can be equipped and attached to the party's guns to make them better, which we'll get into more later. Around the shops, there are either stands or people that can scrap the parts from the battles. And then there's also the tinker that can take those part scraps and make even better attachments for the party's guns. With the tinker making these parts from base parts sold at the shops. So these three systems work in tandem with each other, and are all necessary to be understood as they basically make your gameplay. The customization of the weapon is quite deep, so we'll get into that after explaining the combat, so that the effects of the parts make more sense with the visual. One of the more interesting aspects of the game is the leveling system. In most RPGs, you defeat monsters and then the party gains experience, and when they reach the necessary amount of experience, they'll level up. And this game will be the same, right? Absolutely not. In Resonance of Fate, each of the characters has a level on each of their weapon types, being handguns, submachine guns, and throwable weapons, being like the grenades of the game. When characters do damage with a certain weapon, the damage done with that attack is the experience that is gained to that weapon type. Each weapon type is leveled up separately, with that character's level being a sum of each weapon type's levels. So, meaning that handgun level 3, machine gun level 4, and throwing weapon level 4 will equal a character level of level 11. So, with this system, it is necessary to switch around the different weapons with the characters to make sure they're all properly leveling up. You can leave a specific weapon type on one character, of course, but they will level up far slower than if you had switched the weapon types individually. This seems like it would take a long time to do, but as the game progresses and with the scratch mechanic of the game, many weapons can be shot up very quickly in level, so the grind is not very tedious. Leveling up is necessary as leveling up increases the character's health and the charge gauges that can be used in battle, but more on that later. Leveling up also increases the total weight that the character can carry, which will matter later when customizing the guns. Now that I've talked about the gameplay other than the actual battles, I think it's about time we get into the actual meat in the game, and it's a bit complicated for a battle system. The battle system has many aspects to it that are honestly not explained very well in the game, so I want to take time to make sure that I'm properly discussing it in detail. So this is going to be a bit of a long part. When starting a battle, you can see the party's health, level, and items and the weapons that the current character has equipped in the bottom right corner. With this, you can switch between the equipped items to use their effects, and with this, the characters can equip two weapons at the same time and use them if they have the stats for it. In the top left corner of the screen, it shows the status of the currently selected enemy. On the bar with the character information of the background of the bar, which is blue, it shows how much the character can charge and attack and move around the area. So when moving the character around the area, or charging an attack, this bar lowers till it is depleted. When this runs out, the character turn automatically ends. At the bottom of the screen is the hero gauge, which is the most important thing you want to watch for in a battle. The bezels allow for powerful attacks to be performed, and while there are bezels on the gauge, all of the damage that the party take is taken as scratch damage, which we'll discuss in a second. Many of the enemies in the game have gauges or shields around their body that can be seen on the ground around them. By breaking these gauges and defeating enemies, you get back bezels depending on the number of gauges that were broken on an attack. The gauges block damage coming from the respective direction that the gauge covers. When the hero gauge is completely depleted, the party then enters a state called critical condition, with all of the damage they take being direct damage. Of course, you can't use hero actions, and the only move you can use are regular attacks. The characters in this state become completely frightened and they shoot far slower than they normally do. When a character runs out in this state, it is an instant game over. There are two types of damage in this battle system, being direct damage and scratch damage. First, we'll talk about scratch damage. Attacks done by submachine guns make the enemy's health lower, becoming blue. This damage cannot kill the enemy, but in a combination with direct damage, can instantly kill the enemy. Scratch damage heals over time, meaning that you'll need to follow up to kill enemies quickly. And scratch damage healing applies to the party as well. So when you take damage in battle, and it's only scratch damage, after the battle is done, you'll be completely healed. Direct damage is done by handguns and throwables. It is the main way of actually killing enemies, but direct damage does not actually do a lot of damage itself, and must be used in tandem with scratch damage to successfully and quickly kill enemies. The scratch damage done previously combines with direct damage done to become the total amount of direct damage done. While they cannot kill at higher health levels, it can be used to break health bars and gauges. When they are broken, they can be used to get far more bezels on your hero gauge than you normally would get back, depending on the amount of times and parts that the gauge has been broken into. This also stuns the enemy, stopping attacks and giving you more time to do damage. Scratch damage can be applied to gauges in combination with direct damage to destroy the said gauge. There are two main ways of attacking, being regular attacking and hero actions. When regular attacking, choosing the enemy to shoot makes a character begin to aim and charge a gauge that is present around the enemy's body. When the gauge fills once, the character can then attack, but aiming for longer charges the gauge, further increasing the damage dealt. The number of times that the gauge can be charged is equal to that of the weapon's level. So, a level 12 submachine gun is a maximum of 12 charges. As the amount of charges rise, skills that are gained at that level will be applied to the attack. So, getting the charge as high as possible before attacking is key to doing the most damage. This works as the number of charges is multiplied by the characteristics of that weapon. For the submachine gun, it multiplies it with the damage of the submachine gun to increase the amount of damage done by each singular bullet. The handgun has a gauge breakage multiplied, making it easier to break gauges. For grenades, it increases the knockback. Hero action is the best part of the game, being the main way you will attack during the game. After starting a hero action, you set the course for the character to travel being a straight line, but if the character runs into an obstacle, it will end the hero action immediately. While running during a hero action, the character is completely invincible, being unable to take damage, unlike when you're just moving around normally. When starting a hero action, one of the bezels on the hero gauge located at the bottom of the screen will be used. During a hero action, the character will begin to run in that line that was set and will begin to be charging an attack on the currently selected enemy. The time that the character takes to travel allows for the gauge to charge far more than you would normally in a normal attack. There are two ways that you can attack while doing the hero action: jumping and shooting while running, both having different effects to the attack. Shooting while on the ground can knock the enemy into the air, and sometimes triggering a bonus shot. During a bonus shot, if the right part of the gauge is hit, you are able to perform a powerful charged attack. While shooting on the ground, if the angle that the character is shooting is guarded by a gauge, then that enemy's gauge will take that scratch damage or direct damage. While attacking in the air after jumping, the bullets that are shot have a lot more spread and aim to attack the enemy's main body. This means that if you can get the angle correct, you can bypass the gauges that block the damage and apply damage for the kill without having to deal with the actual gauges. If you knock an enemy into the air, then jump into the air and attack again, you can perform a smackdown attack that deals extra damage to the enemy. There is one last form of attacking, being tri-attacks. It is an attack in which all the characters attack at the same time, which allows for powerful combos that deal a lot of damage quickly. Tri-attacks require resonance, and you get resonance by using a hero action to intersect the line that is drawn between two characters in an area. When you pass this line, you gain one resonance that you will see above the character's stats. You can gain more than one resonance by doing the same thing multiple times. But if you move the characters after gaining resonance, you lose that resonance. During a tri-attack, the characters run in a triangle shape that they form. So to get the maximum effect, it's best to spread them out. The characters during the tri-attack work as if they were doing hero actions, but all at once. After doing one, it'll switch to the next character repeatedly until you reach a corner. If you have multiple resonance, the characters will continue to travel along. If you have multiple resonance, the characters will continue to travel around the triangle until you run out of said resonance. With some of the bosses in the game, performing tri-attacks is the best way to deal damage, quickly. The last things in battle are the first aid kit, the grenade box, and the magazine case that greatly affects the flow of battle. Each of these things need to be equipped to one of the two slots for each of the characters to be used in battle. The first aid kit, when equipped, allows for items to be used in battle, and there are a variety of items, but the main ones heal damage, heal status effects, and lower the amount of damage taken. The grenade boxes will allow for throwables to be used, with there being many kinds of throwables for applying status effects. Grenades and throwables tend to be very good for gauge breaking and doing a lot of direct damage by itself, without needing for scratch damage. The last thing is the magazine case, which changes the bullets fired from the ones equipped to other ones. The other bullets allow for status effects to be applied or increase damage to enemies. For metal coated rounds, it increases the amount of damage done in the hard parts of the body. So this can be armor or entire bodies of machine enemies. Hollow point rounds, in contrast, do more damage to the soft parts of the enemy's bodies than their actual bodies after the armor has been destroyed. So metal coated rounds can be used to destroy gauges, and then hollow pointed rounds to finish off the enemy. This combo will be enough to defeat most enemies in the game. One of the key aspects of this game that will affect both the way you fight and the difficulty of your battles is the gun customization of the game. Before explaining how the customization of the gun is, I want to discuss the different stats or elements of each weapon. The list of them is attack power, gauge break, charge speed, charge acceleration, rapid fire, bullet focus, and magazine size, and the weapon's weight. Many of these you necessarily don't have to worry about. The ones to worry about is first, charge acceleration, which is multiple charge speed bonus, making you able to attack far faster. Next is charge speed, which is the base in which the attack is charged up. Increasing these is a priority, as charging fast allows for stronger attacks after more charge gauges and skills can be applied to the attacks themselves. Next is the magazine size. Increasing the amount of bullets fired depending on the weapon increases the amount of damage done and a chance to perform gauge breaks. Then the last is bullet focus, which lessens the spread of bullets being fired, making them hit the target more. But this is less important as you can get close to enemies with hero actions and still position out of line of attacks. With those explained, we can talk about customizing weapons now. In the customization screen, you will see the weapon selected and the parts that can be used on that weapon. In this, it is essentially a game of matching the shape together to attach to different parts to the weapon. The barrels increase the charge acceleration, the scopes increase the charge speed, the foregrip increases rapid fire and bullet focus, and the magazine increases the amount of bullets fired at once. As the game progresses, there will be more attachments that can be obtained and crafted that have more attachment points that allow for greater customization and increased effects. This can lead to quite a confusing mess when a lot of parts are being affixed to the weapon, but this in itself can be quite addictive once you get used to the system. For example, check out the number of things I have affixed to this submachine gun, and this isn't even the most optimal way this can be done. Customizing the gun is done based on how you'll be using the gun in your strategies, but charge acceleration and charge speeds are key things to focus on. Each of the different attachments have a weight to them, that will be added to the base weight of the gun. If the new part will increase the weight over what the character can currently hold, that part won't be affixed or equipped to that character. As the characters level up, the amount of weight that they can hold is increased. So for me playing, weight was never a problem during my customizing. Now that you have an introduction into the world of Resonance of Fate, I want to take time to get into the story that takes place in the Tower of Bastille. I want to say that from here, I will be going in depth with the story, so there will be spoilers for the game from this point forward. So if you think this game is interesting to you, and that you might play it, stop the video here and play the game. One last thing before we start the story. Story of the game is presented in pieces, and many of them don't make sense until finishing the game or replaying it. So I want to shout out this Reddit post here, where in the comments, this user connects many of the pieces of the story that the game feeds throughout the gameplay. This comment helped both explaining and making sense of the pieces, so this post is a big part of how I understood the story, and how I will explain the story from here on. I'll have a link to that post in the description, so if you want to read it, you can go to that. I'll begin explaining the story with the events that happened before the beginning of the tale, as it will make digesting the story far easier. But I plan to present the revelations and the twists as the story did. But with all that said, let's dive into the story of Resonance of Fate. Thousands of years before the beginning of the game, the Earth became a polluted, desolate wasteland that was uninhabitable by the humans of the time. It is not explained the event that devastated the planet, but whatever it was, nearly killed everyone living on the planet. The people of the time constructed that massive tower, with its purpose being to purify the pollution, making the planet a wasteland. The name of this tower was Bastille. The purification of the planet would take thousands of years to be completed, so the mechanical marvel that is the Tower of Bastille was made to be controlled by a supercomputer named the Zenith. The pollution caused cancer to run rampant and became a plague on the people that were now inhabitants of the Tower of Bastille, being the only safe place from the pollution. The cancer continued to devastate the people, and since someone found a way to link the human lives to quartz stones, the quartz was a material that was in vast abundance underneath the tower, and the quartz was connected to the people, using the Zenith as an intermediary. With the introduction of quartz linking, cancer was soon healed, and it completely disappeared from the lives of the humans. The problem with this being that the human lives were now dependent on the quality of the respective quartz stone. Normally, this does not matter as the quartz stones deteriorate slowly, lasting around 100 years. But if the quartz stone was to suddenly break, that person's life would instantly end. The seal's purpose was to purify the world, not to be a place for people to live on. So the tower began to break down at a quick pace. The tower was completely autonomous thanks to the Zenith, so the tower worked without any input from the tower's inhabitants. Without the need to control or make inputs as time passed, the purpose of the seal and the history itself began to slowly slip from the conscious of the generations that began to pass. With no one understanding the tower and how to maintain it, the seal continued to deteriorate at a quick pace, with the gears continuing to turn thanks to the Zenith. But with this, there were many areas that were completely lost in function. Due to the loss of understanding of what and where the tower came from, people began to believe that it was a gift from God, starting religion on the tower. With everyone being on the tower for so long, the outside world began to feel non-existent. When they look outside the tower, they don't really see a world. Roughly 20 years before the beginning of the game, Freda was a prelate of Bastille, with a man named Rowan being her right-hand man and possibly lover. The prelate position was the leader position that ruled over the entirety of Bastille, with the cardinals being in direct control underneath the prelate. During Freda's reign, she united all the layers of Bastille under her will to free the people of the tower from their suffering. And for the first time in a while, there was peace and hope in the tower. This is when tragedy destroyed that peace. The people of the lower levels were far poorer than those in the higher levels, being desperate for cash. So they set their sights on the even lower levels to dig deeper, hoping to find rubies, the currency of the seal. While digging, the people of the lower levels found the quartz vein located underneath the tower, and not knowing its purpose, continued to dig. This caused the spontaneous instant death syndrome, with people from all over Bastille suddenly dying as the miners continued to dig into the quartz vein. With no one understanding why this was happening, the people turned to a religious answer, being that the deaths were punishments and a message from God. The people of the tower became hyper-religious, but the God that they were praying to never answered their prayers. After some time in this, the prelate Freda herself succumbed to the instantaneous death syndrome. with her body being entombed in the basilica, being the place the prelate resides, being at the top of the tower. In the lower levels of the tower, there were two men, Sullivan and Juris. Both of these men had a fascination with trying to understand the purpose of the seal, with Sullivan being a genius in this regard. With their knowledge and understanding of the tower, they shot up the ranks and soon began living and assigned to the chandelier itself. Both understood much of the history of the tower and knew the true purpose of the courts. After the death of the prelate, Rome was next in line for the position, and due to this, Sullivan showed him the zenith at the top of the tower and explained the cause of the instantaneous death syndrome. This revelation destroyed Roman. Being a religious man, now having his faith shaken, Roman can agree that everyone, including himself, being devout believers in God, had their fates and deaths decided by a machine, seemingly playing God itself. The struggle of everyone terrified of a plague killing the residents of the seal, praying for it to stop, wasn't to their God, but to a supercomputer named Zenith. He wanted to believe that there was a true God, a being that meant there was more to life, and that there was a grander plan at work. But being shown the Zenith shattered this hope. After being shown this, Rowan became the stand-in leader for Basil, even though he never took up the rank as prelate. His first order was to stop the mining that was happening in the court's vein, and this angered the people at the lower level, seeing this as the chandelier taking away their one chance of reaching the higher levels of society. With the ban on mining in the quartz vein, the instantaneous death syndrome that had been plaguing the tower completely stopped. After the death of the previous prelate, all of the cardinals that had been united under her reign split, with them each having their own opinions on how to better the tower. After his faith being destroyed, Rowan still wanted to carry out the wish of freedom, being to free the people of their suffering. He sought to do this by finding a way to control the zenith itself, but there was one thing that continued to bother him. There was one part of the religious scriptures that spoke of resurrection and made him question that maybe with the power of the zenith, maybe he could bring Freda back. He himself was not a scientist, but Juris and Sullivan were. The pair wanted to properly study how human lives were linked to the courts. They set up an experiment with the project being funded by Rowan. Sullivan found a way to locate a person's corpse based on the day that they were born. This finding was the basis of their experiment. Around this time, there was a cardinal that was a devout, strict man of religion, being Cardinal Lagerfeld. He wanted to follow the prelate's wish of freeing the people of the tower from suffering, and his way of doing this was by closely and devoutly following the scriptures. After the tragedy of the instantaneous death syndrome, many people were quick and desperate to turn to God. In wake of this, Cardinal Lagerfeld decided to found a place that would raise the orphans to be devout followers of God and the scriptures, with them being the de facto placeholders, the next leaders of society. The adventure of our characters begins with a young woman walking across a bridge. She steps and steps until she reaches her destination. On the ground below, a boy notices her walking over the bridge, about to jump. She jumps from the bridge, and with the boy's quick reflexes, he rescues her, with them both tumbling over the edge. A year and a few months later, our group, being Vacheron, the boy Zephyr, and the girl Leanne, receive a job. With them being hunters, they set out to complete it. The job is simple: to pick up and deliver a package. The group heads to Chelsea Cafe, where they meet with Sullivan to pick up the package. Sullivan is seen with an injury on his hand. The group leaves the cafe and heads to the chandelier where Cardinal Pater's manor is located. They have Leanne present the quartz stone, with the cardinal eyes glowing, showing that it is indeed his stone. The Cardinal Pater becomes infatuated with Leanne during this interaction. With the job completed, the group returns to their base, with the mission being completed. On the way back, the group has a conversation on why the stone is even so important. From this conversation, it's clear that the people of this world aren't fully aware of the quartz's purpose. With the job completed, the group of hunters head out for their next mission. The next mission is given by a cardinal named Larissa. Under the pretense of a simple garden party, Cardinal Theresa and Vacheron have a conversation, but they're having concern over Zephyr and wondering who Leanne is. After reassurance from Vacheron and telling her that Leanne is someone who was saved by Zephyr, she says that maybe he has changed. She then gives them the mission to deliver a fake rose to the place that her husband, Victor, died in the Battle of Lucia. On their travel, they discuss how real flowers are difficult to come by in Brazil. This is an inkling of how the tower is genuinely not made for people to live on, so many of the things that would be common are scarce. When reaching the resting place of Victor, Vacheron speaks on what kind of man Victor was, telling the others that this was someone that Vacheron knew before he died. On the way back to the base, the group overhears a broadcast that Rowan is having with the entire Tower of Basil, and after his speech, we can see him drinking and staying in the distance. On the next shower, the power station that powers the fourth layer of the tower breaks down and causes a blackout, and the blackout causes this hilarious situation at the beginning of the chapter.
最近多いよね。
ふざけた演出かましてんじゃねえぞ。
まさかモンスター。
おお、早い早い。
Small moments like this show how close the group is, with them having interactions that are just naturally funny. The party then heads out to the huge power station and fights their way through the machines there. They reach the furthest part inside, fixing the power station, and restore power to the fourth layer. On their way out of the power station, this moment happens with Leanne and Zephyr.
発電所がこのざまでもシャンデリアは何の影響もなしか。
シャンデリア綺麗なんだね。あそこにいた時はわからなかった。
け大層な名前の割に光は全然届かね
でも私はこっちの方が好き。
おいおい、帰るぞ。
ゼファー早く来ないと置いてっちゃうよ。
一人は慣れてる。
え、何？
Now, with this chapter, I should say that many of the chapters in the game are the party completing a job that was given to them, and that's all it is for their side of the chapter. Many of the story beats in the game happen between chapters surrounding the other characters of the story. In the in-between for this chapter, we listen in on a conversation between Rowan and Sullivan. Rowan is feeling remorseful about the deaths of some people, but resolves to say that he won't let their deaths be in vain, and that he will make Frida's wish come true. Sullivan enters, and they have a conversation about the world, or the Tower of Basil, or being controlled by the machine rather than a god. In the next chapter, the group takes a job for those who truly understand art and beauty. So, they dress Leanne up and head for the cardinal that made the request. The cardinal that made this request is Cardinal Garigiano. He is a strange man that has a flair for artistic expression. When he sees Leanne, he is inspired to finally create something, and this is one of the moments that made me realize how good the character models were in this game. He needs the group to get the materials to make what he wants to create. So the group heads to the Forest of Idols to get mannequin parts. After recovering the parts, they have a conversation about the flowers around the area that they are in. Vacheron and Zephyr say that she can take the flowers since they weren't told that they couldn't. And seeing her reaction, Zephyr smiles. I think that this conversation is strong, with it showing that Leanne's happiness has a positive effect on Zephyr, who's normally gloomy and quiet. Zephyr's smile is subtle, but it shows the effect that Leanne has on him, and I like this form of character expression, without them flat out saying it. After delivering the parts and Galianto's rantings, making Zephyr walk away, the group returns to the base. In the cutscene between chapters, we have Sullivan explaining the mechanics of the Zenith for the first time. He tells how the Zenith regulates the lifespan of every human and can run autonomously for thousands of years. He also tells that it does this regulation based on how the humans are linked to the quartz. At the end, Rowan remarks about the deaths of some people. It is clear that the death of these people, whoever they are, haunts him. The next chapter involves an escort mission for the group. The one given the job is Cardinal Jean Paulette, who was also the one who requested the statue from Gardiano. The group heads to an open-air studio that they went to before to drop off the parts, and seek the statue that was made of Leanne, and, rightfully so, are confused on what they're looking at. While setting up the statue for escort, it led to a conversation about religion in the tower that ended up with an open-ended answer. The group transports the statue to the drop-off location and then heads back to the base. The conversation brings back memories within Zephyr, but as of now we don't fully understand them. When they get to the top of the tower, which was their drop-off point, the conversation is about the outside world and what would even be the point of jumping from the balcony, with Zephyr having little care for life, attempts to jump over the edge. After this, the group returns to the base. In the in-between cutscene, it is a discussion between Rowan and Sullivan, which is about making a key to control the Zenith. After Rowan gives Sullivan his ring, which is something very important to him, given to him by Frida, they discuss that they are horrible people, and that's just the way they'll continue to live. Rowan continues to lament the deaths. Rowan continues to lament the deaths of 20 people, saying that he still remembers the innocence in their eyes. In the next chapter, the group receives a job from Cardinal Barbella, so they head out to her manor to hear the specifics of the job. The job is for them to get a bottle of wine before Cardinal Barbella finishes her meal. This initially makes Vacheron mad, but after seeing Barbella's assets, his tune changes and leads to one of the funniest cutscenes in the game.
それは本当に天然物なのでしょうか。あなたがそのグレネードを炸裂させるおつもりならば、こちらも自慢のビッグマグナムで応戦せざるを得ないような、そんな気がしてならない。が、しかし、よーく考えろ俺。依頼は戦闘ではない。そうだ。ワインだ。
The group heads down to the 7th layer to the Silver Canyon, a tundra-like facility that is used to keep stuff frozen on Brazil. The group makes their way through the Silver Canyon and retrieves the bottles of wine, keeping one for themselves. Zephyr returns to the base, not caring about the wine. Vacheron and Line takes the bottles to the drop-off point, being a cafe located on the 7th layer. While at this cafe, they indulge in the wine, and during their conversation with the barkeeper, it brings back memories in Leanne, which causes her to cry. Back at the base, Cardinal Pater and Zephyr are having a conversation about bad memories, and says that it only takes the slightest thing to trigger a memory and set someone off. This applied to the entire group, with them all having memories that cause them problems. But after this conversation, Vacheron and Leanne return to the base. At the same time, Rowan is having a conversation with Cardinal Veronica. She is Rowan's right-hand woman and is always by his side. Rowan is drinking again while having a conversation about him drinking, showing that Rowan has a drinking problem. It then switches to Sullivan having a conversation with Rebecca, saying that he envies her. He continues to say that she is free, not being bound by the Zenith system and control. This hints that she is not from Basil itself, so there are people outside of Basil not bound by the cage that is the tower. He wishes that she could speak, but she cannot, so he is stuck with hundreds of questions for her. In the next chapter, we see what took place in Leanne's life before she joined the group. At some point in the past, she was gravely sick, and we can see Sullivan say that he doesn't care what happens to her, as long as she stays alive so that they can get the results. The scientist feels sorry for the girl, and places something inside of her hand, seemingly being what makes her better. Leanne, without knowing it at the time, was one of the people being experimented on by Sullivan and Juris, and we can see that this is part of the secret experiment that was being funded by Rowan for the past 20 years. The experiment involved 20 orphans that were all born on Christmas. Each of the orphans had their quartz located, and for each Christmas for 20 years, one of the children would have their quartz destroyed. This experiment was performed for the sake of researching the human and quartz link and trying to find a means to control the Zenith. When it was a child's turn to have their quartz broken, the other subjects were simply told that it was their time to leave or that they were graduating. That's not actually what was happening to them. In this experiment, Leanne was the last of the children, being the 20th child. On Christmas Day, the day that the 19th child was escorted out, Leanne was the last one left talking with Juris about how excited she was to be able to leave after one more year. Juris felt sorry for the girl and decided that he would secretly let her escape the facility. But on the way out of the facility, they ran into Rowan. Rowan saw this and confronted him. Juris pleaded with him to let Leanne go and let her live the last year of her life the way she wanted to. Rowan, remembering the words of Freda, relented and decided to let her go. Leanne was shaken from this, and during her escape, grabbed Juris' notebook. From the notebook, she learned that her life was an experiment, and that all the other children that had left had truly just met a cruel fate. After her memory ending after her being left at the gate, we see that this is just all Leanne remembering during her fever dream caused by getting sick. Zephyr and Vacheron head to the Silver Canyon and retrieve medicine. They get the medicine and head back to the base and give it to Leanne. After reading and learning that she will die in a year, regardless of what she does, she decides that, at the very least, she would choose how she dies. And this is why she was on the bridge, attempting to jump before being saved by Zephyr. When the guys open the door, Leanne welcomes them back, realizing that everything she ever wanted was already right next to her. The beginning of the next chapter, we see a man freaking out about finding the quartz vein that is underneath the tower. This man is General Jelsi. He has a grudge against the Cardinals due to a previous incident, so he breaks into the mine to see what the Cardinals are hiding there. We see that the mines were abandoned. We ourselves know, though, that the mines were abandoned due to the instantaneous death syndrome. Sullivan makes a job for the group to handle Jelsi quietly. He gets the group to do it, as the quartz vein is a secret from the general public that must be kept, so he can't send the military to handle it. Then the group arrives at their mine. They discuss the mission. Zephyr asks questions like, is the stone in the mine really that important? And Vacheron simply responds that he doesn't question his betters. The group travels through the mine, dealing with Jelsi's goons, and after going through the mine, they reach Jelsi himself and confront him. After the group defeats Jelsi, Sullivan shows up and recognizes Leanne as the last child of the experiment. She doesn't recognize him, as Juris was the one that watched over the orphans themselves. He was surprised that she was still alive and knows that he needs to make sure that Rowan never finds out about her. So far, Sullivan has been using Rowan for funding, and used making a key for the Zenith as an excuse to make sure that Rowan couldn't get rid of him just yet. Rowan seeing Leanne would make this apparent, as Leanne was supposed to have already died. And just this would be enough to show Rowan that Sullivan hasn't been completely truthful with him, and he'll know that the Zenith cannot be controlled. After this, the group returns to the base, and the in-between cutscene is Sullivan theorizing. He correctly theorizes that their ancestors are the ones that made Basil and the Zenith. He continues to think that there may have been a system within the Zenith that they are not aware of. We then see Rebecca bite Sullivan's already bandaged hand, and from this, we learn that Sullivan has been feeding the girl his blood. He says that he must hurry regardless of what Rowan knows, as his position is definitely compromised. In the next chapter, we see that Cardinal Pater invites Leanne on a date, as a job. Leanne is originally against it, but after some convincing, she relents. And we see the guys follow her to Patertopolis to spy on the date. The guys make their way through Patertopolis, finding Leanne and Prater sitting on a bench. They sit and discuss that the stone that they delivered to him made him really happy, and wishes that everyone in Brazil that struggled just to get by were happy too. At the end of the date, a gremlin comes. Pater tries to fight it, throwing a punch, and this shatters his dome, making him die on the spot. After the group returns to the base, we see Sullivan reporting to Rowan that they have begun accessing the Zenith longevity control, and that the ring wouldn't change in any way. And this was just a lie so that Rowan couldn't get rid of him. Sullivan understands that once Rowan gets control over the Zenith, that Rowan would only see him as a problem with him knowing so much. They discuss what would be possible with the power of the Zenith under their control, and that finding the quartz stones of adults is far harder to do than with infants and newborns, as the link with quartz stones happens right after birth. Sullivan says that it should be a priority for both of them to locate their stones and protect them. At the beginning of the next chapter, we see what took place during the Battle of Lucia. During the battle, Vacheron was a member of the military being called to partake in the ruin explorations in the city. Vacheron was under the command of General Victor, Cardinal Therese's husband, who was chosen for the operation over General Jelsi. This is the decision that made Jelsi resentful towards the Cardinals, with him later breaking into the mine. Cardinal Anturion was the one that sent them there under the false report, so Vacheron's group went in completely blind. There in the room, the group came across Rebecca, wreaking havoc in Lucia. With her strength, she completely wiped out all of Vacheron's group, with him barely escaping with Victor. While trying to escape, Vacheron said that Sullivan was there, but then disappeared. And after saying this, Victor finally collapses, and Rebecca finds them. She says that both the people at the tower and her were both children of man, with her calling the people that live on Basil sons of the fallen. She explains that her people survived in the outside world, mutating and getting stronger, while Vacheron's ancestors chose to live in the hollow shell of the Zenith. She hates on their use and reliance on machines, and then lunges at Vacheron, plunging her hand through his stomach. We then cut to the group in the present day, receiving a job from Cardinal and Tyrion, with Vacheron visibly upset. The group heads to the manor to find out what the mission is, with the Cardinal saying that he wants them to return to Lucia to search for sacred signs. Sacred signs are when men who should have absolutely died are revived and kept alive with a supernatural sign being left in a miracle's location. This causes Vacheron to think about when he met Zephyr, but we'll get into that later. The group heads to Lucia, traveling through the ruined city until they reach the spot that Vacheron met Rebecca. We then cut back to when Rebecca attacked Vacheron. After the attack, we see that Rebecca calls Vacheron one of Zenith's knights. Then a sacred sign appears on her chest, then gets blasted away. We then see a sacred sign appear on her chest, and then she gets blasted away. This blast left her weakened and mentally destroyed, with Vacheron surviving the attack barely. Sullivan then found the pair, and took and hid Rebecca away for his own research. After we return to the present, with Vacheron beginning to laugh as, how are they going to find the sign if it appeared on Rebecca's body itself? The group returns to the base, and we see that a conversation between Tyrion and Rowan. The topic of the conversation being how much Rowan has changed since the prelate's death 20 years ago. The conversation turns to Rowan, saying that God is a tool, and this angers Tyrion, with them not understanding the truth of how everything truly works. And Tyrion says some hard-hitting jabs that make Rowan strengthen his resolve. The next chapter, we see Zephyr remembering a young girl trying to get him to take a book of the scriptures, but he cannot take it. Today, Zephyr is holed up in his room and refusing to come out, and Vacheron remembers what day it is. Vacheron gets a flower and takes Lena to the Crank Seminary to pay their respects. There, Vacheron tells how he and Zephyr met. Inside Crank Cemetery, the place that Cardinal Lagerfeld set up as a religious orphanage, Zephyr was being raised here, but he wasn't receptive to the concept of God and the religion that was being preached. He couldn't understand that if God existed, then why would he allow the terrible things that happen to actually happen? Or how would he allow evil people like himself to even exist? Over time, as this religion was forced on him, his mental began. Over time, as his religion was forced on him, his mental health began to deteriorate. Soon Zephyr had a mental breakdown. He came to a simple conclusion, that if God existed, he wouldn't allow him to hurt his followers, and that he wouldn't allow him to do what he was about to do. Using a submachine gun, Zephyr attacked the orphanage, killing everyone inside of Crank Seminary. As he continued, his mental health continued to break. To handle the situation, Cardinal Lagerfeld called a hunter who had a reputation for being the only survivor of the Lucia incident, Vacheron. Vacheron was tasked with killing the demon child that attacked the orphanage, and that's what he was going to do. After a gun battle with Zephyr, Vacheron disarmed him and pinned him and shot him, fatally, but Zephyr somehow survived. At the site of where the bullet hit the statue, there was a sacred sign. So with no other choice, the religious Cardinal Lagerfeld redeemed that judgment had been passed on Zephyr. With Zephyr surviving something similar to him, Vacheron decided to take the boy back to the town with him. After hearing that Zephyr was the attacker and not the victim of the situation, Leanne doesn't know how to deal with that information. After this, we see the pair return to the base. We then see Sullivan explaining what the quartz link does exactly when the stone is destroyed. Being linked to the quartz gives the humans immortality, with their lifespan being the durability of the stone itself. When a quartz stone is broken, it causes instantaneous aging, killing the person instantly. In the beginning of the next chapter, we see that Cardinal Lagerfeld is starting to question his fate, and not being able to accept that Zephyr can continue to live after what he did. So, Lagerfeld heads to the base to handle the situation finally. The scene is pretty good, so I'll let you watch it for yourself.
おお、久しぶりだな。1年、2年ぶりか。今日はなんだ？仕事の話か？
ゼファーという若者に用がある。お前が引き取ったと聞いてきた。
ああ、の神の裁きというやつだな。
神か。私はお前の考え方に共感を覚えたのかもしれん。今日は神に仕えるカーディナルとしてではなく、一人の男としてここを訪れたのだ。
ならなおさら合わせるわけにいかないな。
お前はあの若者を肯定するのか。ならば今すぐ私を殺すがいい。私はいつか必ずお前の敵となる。それとも今から私に雇われるか。金ならいくらでも出すぞ。
肯定はしない。
After this discussion with Vacheron, he tells Zephyr to meet him at the bridge near Ebel City, and so Zephyr does so, finally ready to end it. At the bridge, they have a confrontation, with Lagerfeld yelling at Zephyr and exposing him for his sins. Then the pair begin a gunfight, and soon Zephyr comes out victorious. In their conversation, Lagerfeld explains that if Zephyr had given religion even a chance and opened the book of scripture, he would have learned that he had a sister. This shocked Zephyr, and due to Zephyr being shocked, Lagerfeld took advantage of the situation, gaining the upper hand, with Leanne having to come and save Zephyr, who was already given up. Leanne scolds him for giving up so easily and just letting himself be killed. He can't get rid of his suicidal thoughts, and that he doesn't understand that everyone around him continues to die, but he still continues to live. They return to the base, and there Zephyr shares with Vacheron what he plans to do after making Leanne happy. The next chapter involves Zephyr and Leanne having to participate in a fake wedding, so that Jean Paulette can get married in secret. Jean Paulette's bride's ex-boyfriend then hires Vacheron to crash the wedding, and it leads to a funny moment.
待て待て。恨みはないが花嫁をいただきに来たぜ。バシロン。ありゃりゃ。お前ら何やってんだ。お父さんは許しませんぞ。バシロンこそ。
In the next chapter, Cardinal Derisa makes a job for the group to hand out presents to children on Christmas, with the person that originally had to do it being Pater, but Pater is no longer alive. After the gift giving, Cardinal Derisa invites the group to the mass that is happening in Basilica, and while there, Leanne passes by Rowan, saying Merry Christmas, mirroring what happened a year ago. Rowan instantly recognizes Leanne as test subject number 20, and he is furious. He thinks that either Sullivan has been lying to him about being able to control the Zenith, or a miracle has happened, and Leanne was resurrected, but regardless, Rowan was set on confronting Sullivan. He sends his men to Alderside, the location of the human corpse experiment, but Sullivan is one step ahead, already leaving and trying to get Juris to escape as well. Juris refuses, not seeing any point to continuing now that the project is completed. After meeting Rowan, Leanne is reminded of her promise to Juris, to come back and meet him on her birthday the following year. So her and the group head to Alderside as the place is being raided.
先生、私がいなくなったらやることなくなっちゃうね。
そうだな。
先生が寝ている間にまたいたずらするから近くでお昼寝しててくれる？
あ、いいよ。
嘘ばっかり。でも来年の誕生日には会えるよね。
ああ、必ず。
それも嘘。私が会いに来ます。必ず。
After fighting through the raid, Leanne and Juris reunite and they all head back to the base. Here, Vacheron and Zephyr are filled in on the human corpse relationship. He continues to explain that he has no idea how Leanne is still alive, as her corpse should have been destroyed. but believes that Sullivan must have switched their courts beforehand. He continues that he has no idea why Sullivan would even do such a thing, but hearing all of this sets Zephyr off, knowing that Leanne's life, the person that he cares for the most, is in the palm of Sullivan's hand and wants to confront Sullivan to get it back. They head to Sullivan's residence at the outer wall of the chandelier, with Rowan following to the same location. At the same time, Sullivan is preparing for their arrival. Sullivan hands Rebecca a piece of quartz and tells her to destroy it if he doesn't meet her at the designated location and time. The group arrives as soon as he sends Rebecca off. The group demands for Leanne's corpse, and he responds that he's already had it organized to be destroyed if something were to happen to him. Rowan then arrives, overhearing the conversation, and presses Sullivan for the answers to his questions. He asks why Leanne is standing there alive and well, to which Sullivan responds that miracles are a part of the system, and that her being alive doesn't mean that the experiment was a failure. Rowan says that he wishes to see a miracle to restore his faith in God, and simply shoots Sullivan. In Rowan's mind, if Leanne somehow survives this, then it is indeed a miracle, and she is both immortal and one of God's chosen. After, Vacheron confirms that Sullivan is indeed dead, and they escape while fighting through Rowan's men. After making it back to the base, Leanne wants to talk to Rowan one last time, having accepted that her life will soon end. Leanne is satisfied with her life's wish to live the way she wanted to, being fulfilled during the year with Zephyr and Vacheron. Zephyr is at a loss of what to do, as Leanne was his only reason for living. At the same time, in Basilica, Cardinal Anturion and Cardinal Gardigiano prepare to defend Rowan to keep their promise to Frieza. The party travels to Basilica. There, the group fights through the ranks, taking out both of the Cardinals along the way. The group finally makes their way to Rowan, and Leanne finally asks the question that she wanted to ask. She asks if Rowan regrets the path that he has walked. He responds simply that he does not have any regrets, as he was the one that chose his path, and that no matter where it leads, he would not have any regrets and accepts what happens. The final battle of the game finally ensues. I have to take a minute to fully talk about this final battle. In this battle, you fight Rowan and his minions. After killing a minion, Rowan can spawn another minion, so you have to handle the minions very quickly. At the same time, Rowan is doing damage, and a lot of it at that, so you have to make sure to keep him stunned. Trying to kill the minions and stunning Rowan in the same turn is difficult. Taking too much damage and being put in a critical condition is basically game over for this fight. The other way to win this fight is by doing so much damage and stunning Rowan that he can't do anything. It's the other way. And this is the way that I won the fight. In this fight, Rowan can be inflicted with status effects, with the best being setting him on fire. Setting him on fire takes huge chunks of his health. The fire damage, and the use of tri-attacks after using my submachine gun character to lower his gauges, and then breaking them with the handgun characters, were the way I finally beat him. After the fight with Rowan, Leanne decides not to take the final shot, but then Zephyr hurries and does it himself. After being fatally shot, Rowan is kept alive, with there being a sacred sign at the spot that the bullet hit the painting. This frustrates Zephyr, but with this conclusion, the group leaves. As the group leaves, flower petals begin to fall from the sky. After leaving Basilica, the group talks and begins to ponder about the outside world. This miracle of Rowan surviving the shot was all that was needed to restore his faith in the true God, not the Zenith. Rowan then leaves his ring on Freda's tomb, representing that he has truly given up on trying to control the Zenith. Rowan has come to the conclusion that whether the sacred signs that save people's lives is a glitch in Zenith's system, or some other higher being, doesn't really matter to him anymore. Both the cardinals also rise as well, with flower petals continuing to fall from the sky. Outside of Basil, Rebecca waits at the meeting location that Sullivan told her to go to, but Sullivan doesn't come in time. Rebecca throws the quartz over the edge, shattering the stone. Sullivan then arrives in the area a long time after, and finds Rebecca, the flower petals continuing to fly through the sky. After finally understanding what Rebecca has been saying the entire time, Rebecca finally mutters a single word. After being unable to speak after the incident with the sacred sign, saying, Sullivan. The two then hug under the hundreds of flower petals swirling through the air. Now outside of Basil, in a world now purified, Leanne, Zephyr, and Vacheron explore the vast world. Leanne then raises her hand to the sun, and we see a blue stone shining through her hand, meaning that Leanne's quartz stone has been inside of her hand the entire time. And the thing that the scientist put in there to save her life was her own stone, meaning that the entire time, Leanne had the control of her life in her own hands. And that was Resonance of Fate. I must say that this is one of my favorite games that I've played in the past few years, despite how confusing it can be in the beginning. There are some questions that are not answered by the end of the game, like how Sullivan is even alive, as there isn't a scene of him coming back to life at the end, like the other Cardinals. But I think that he was brought back to life the same way as the others, with the Sacred Sign. Resonance of Fate has so many things that are so good about it, it's sad that the game didn't receive the praise that it rightfully deserves. The fights are cool, and the rush from seeing the characters perform stylish gun tricks never fades throughout the game, despite it having JRPG length and playtime. The game is very difficult until you get a strong understanding of the systems and mechanics, and I don't think that it's exactly a problem. Dying in battles and having to rework your strategies is one of the aspects that I remember the most about this game. The customization system sucked me in for hours, with me trying to get my weapons the best that I could get them. Now, of course, this game won't be for everyone. The battle system can be a mess to understand, and even then, the enemies and bosses themselves are strictly difficult. And with the story being difficult to follow at some points, I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't play this game. But I think this game is truly something special. I think it deserves more praise than it's gotten over the years. So, if you think this game is interesting, I want you to consider playing it for yourself, so you can understand the greatness of this hidden gem. With all that said, I want to thank you for making it this far into the video. And if you think that my content is something that you like, subscribe. With all that being said, I want to thank you for making it this far into the video. And if you think my content is something that you would like, subscribe, as I plan on making more content like this. And finally, thank you for watching me rant about a game I like.